We're going to get started. Thank you, everybody who was able to attend the hearings this morning. It was very informative. As usual, our Chancellor did an excellent job presenting the case for the online community college. So with that, we're going to actually take a couple things out of order. We're going to start with item 4.11. While the issue is fresh in our mind, we're going to take up the governor's proposal for a new online college. Executive Vice Chancellor Von Tonquinlivan.
Thank you very much, President Estolano, Chancellor Oakley, and members of the board. So maybe we can flip on the slides. Do we have somebody back there? Great, thank you. While Christian Asminia is still over at the hearing, we'll take up this topic. What I wanted to do was, you heard a very thorough presentation this morning by the Chancellor. I would just like to complement this morning's conversation by talking through some of the listening and learning sessions that we are orchestrating right now to make sure that we're getting feedback from a wide range of stakeholders, including internal and external. In addition to the CEOs formally organizing and giving us formal feedback on their positions and design principles, we wanted to share that there has been a series of future of work meetups that the Chancellor referred to. There's over 20 of them across the whole state, and they have been as small as 30, but on average, they're usually about between 75 to 120 people. So they've been very well attended, and I'll share some of the slides with you so that you are aware of the conversations happening there. In addition, we have 50 stakeholders coming together in a design thinking session. So, we've talked about different processes that help move us along. We have shared governance process, we have design Lean Six Sigma process. Design thinking is another process where we engage diverse stakeholders, and in this one, we're partnering with the Institute for the Future in the Silicon Valley, and all the 50 stakeholders, including the building trades, SEIU 1000, SEIU United Healthcare workers, and employers, and disability rights, and many other groups, and our technologists are coming together to do a process where we do a kickoff session to look at all these signals of the future of work and the use of learning technologies. We are asked to play with a vetted list of technologies, everything from the Western Governors University online experience to a number of other experiences, and then come together for 2 days where we really think deeply about the population of 2.5 million stranded workers and how the best of these learning technologies can apply to the student experience. In addition, we also have 4 CTE faculty webinars that are open to all, and then once the pathways are designed, we'll be also doing special listening sessions where we are listening to working learners as well as bringing together faculty experts. So all of this is on this website, and here I just want to acknowledge the range of partners who are coming together to host the 20+ future work meetups. The Chancellor talked a lot about automation and the sort of the cycle time of training that is needed. One example that we learned when we were out meeting with the Boston Federal Reserve, as well as the New England Higher Education Commission, was a young man who was a CEO of an artificial intelligence company. And he talked about the friction that he was having as he was introducing AI into companies and what that was doing to the HR side of the house that was unprepared. So in sort of generation 1 of the introduction of AI, it was being brought in to deal with the backlog of call center, right? So people are sitting on the phone waiting for a long time. They bring in the AI in order to field those backlog. But in generation 2, once the AI has already built up the questions and answers, you really don't need as robust a call center. So that really began to impact the companies because they hadn't anticipated these transitions. And so they're beginning to ask the question of, well, how do we reskill workers so that they can be more resilient as these changes come, and how do we get ahead of those curves and train? Another example is a company in a CEO of a small manufacturing company who went around his company and asked, why aren't my workers getting that first industry valued credential? And to the Chancellor's point about affordability and flexibility, the workers were saying, well, clearly I needed to work around my schedule and all my family obligations. But the other part on the financial, even though the company had tuition reimbursement, the fact that the workers had to float the money from the time they had to pay to the time they get reimbursed was a real problem. So the CEO actually went back and changed that policy to having tuition paid up front, and that helped his workers go from 60 who took part in the tuition reimbursement to actually 700 employees who began to work on their own training. So this is a minor change on behalf of employers, but we all need to kick in order to be able to have better train their workers and get to the first credential. So here are all the tenets of the community college, the online community college that the Chancellor talked about. About a week and a half ago, I was at a convening of the CCC AOE, which is the Trade Association for CTE Deans, and there were roughly 130 CTE faculty that were there. So I asked everybody to stand up and say—
Career technical education for our new members.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Because this is career technical education, essentially. So I asked them to all stand up and said, well, how many of you are doing online that is competency-based? And a surprising number still stayed standing. And we said, okay, the best providers out there are able to have start dates no less than once a month, so that's 12 times. The best is at 40 times. So how many of you can do 12 to 40 starts a year? And then everybody except 2 tables sat down and said, okay, now how many of you can do onboarding that is in language? Because we said at least 49% of this population is Spanish speaking. And then only 1 person remained. And then when I asked her what college she was from, she said she was from Coastline. I said, well, it was actually your Chief Student Services Officer that said that this student services model is one that he cannot operationalize in his current context, and he was the one who advised us and the entire work group that this was too difficult to achieve in the current context. So really, the fact that it's competency-based, uncoupled from the academic calendar, and that there's a robust data science, learning science R&D unit in order to deliver the personalized, these are real challenges for our students. I just wanted to offer a little bit of data here. The Chancellor shared that the quality of fully supported online has been improving. We saw that even within our own faculty. But here's a study by ASU Online, so Arizona State University Online, who've been around for a bit longer. They studied 1.3 million student course observations, which included 280,000 unique students and 21,000 Californians. And what they saw was no gap when comparing campus and online when it came to completion and mastery, and a 2-point gap when it came to passing. And at-risk students fared no worse, and in some cases substantially better in their than the on-campus environment. And this is because of the personalization and the high supports that were given. So they've done a lot of studies in terms of controlling quality and in terms of controlling different cohorts. So let me end with this slide. So some of the themes that we've heard from at least 5 of these meetups, everybody is on the same page when it comes to the need for high support student experience. I think that's our assumption when it comes to quality. Faculty interaction is different in this world than in the physical world. So the best providers have 3 types of faculty: a faculty expert, which is a subject matter expert; faculty mentor, where each student is paired with a mentor who touches base with them every week and answers their questions, helps them design a pathway; and then there's faculty assessors, because this is competency-based, so you have to assess whether or not the student have mastered the competency. We talked about being culturally appropriate, so ideas like onboarding in language. There was definitely a lot of conversation about belonging to a tribe. So if you, even in the online environment, we all need to belong to a tribe. And so in conversation with Stanford, there's a whole center being set up to study the community and affinity in the online world. So we're having Stanford participate in this design thinking session. And then there's questions raised about how do you onboard someone who may be less of a digital native. The Chancellor has already talked about the worries around enrollment impact. And then in terms of the use of the current online education initiative, the governor has done a good job of investing over the last 5 years in the OEI to expand our current capacity. Thanks to that, all colleges have access to the learning management system license. They also have trained over 400 instructors on how to do instructional design. But to date, we are still needing to work on adding colleges and their curriculum to the online ed inventory, so the course exchange. We talked about, we got feedback about bundling technology and equipment. So let's say you need the iPad and an Oculus in order to do virtual reality simulations. How do you bundle that in terms of the equipment that students may need to participate in some of these curriculum? The Chancellor already talked about 3 pathways, about dual accreditation. And then I think a clever idea that was brought up by some trustees was not only would this college benefit the 114 college, because any gains in understanding how to do faculty professional development must be shared with the other colleges. Any gains in understanding how to take advantage of data science and technology will be shared with the other colleges. That there's an intent to refer students once they get attracted to learning and building their skills. But there was a clever idea from trustees in Sonoma asking whether there could be revenue sharing. So this is what we've heard so far, and we'll continue to collect feedback from the field and external stakeholders.
Ask a question on dual accreditation. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yes, so there's an agency called the Distance Education Accrediting Council,
Okay.
so DEAC. DEAC accredits based on competencies, and then we'll also pursue ACCJC.
Oh, okay.
Yes, which is the accreditation body for the rest of the colleges.
Okay, that your full presentation? Okay, and I think we have some speaker cards, Mr. Vice President?
Yeah.
And then we'll do questions after the speaker cards.
Lynette Niaga and Adam Whitson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we all came from the hearing. It was interesting. I have spoken to you before about the online community college, but we have new board members, so I thought it would be best if I reiterated our concerns with the online community college for those new board members. All of us in CCA, CTA support online education. We support innovation. We have many of our faculty who teach online. And we also have many programs run by our existing 114 community colleges. We absolutely understand the advantages of expanding online offerings for the targeted population of those who need additional CTE courses for short-term, long-term certificates, enabling them to get higher salaries or possibly earn associate's degrees and transfer later on. The Chancellor's office has shared with the board many comments, quotations from various parties supporting online education. We agree with those sentiments in favor of the efficacy of online education for some students. However, here's the however, the governor's proposal in January for a separate online community college is not the answer in our view, and we have 3 reasons for this. First, there are constitutional issues having to do with Prop 98, which would bar the Chancellor's office from receiving funds to administer this college. Second, from a labor perspective, we must oppose the current language, which would use only part-time faculty to teach the classes. This is just replicating the for-profit model. And this is not becoming to the state of California as progressive as we are. And third, the current language states that these faculty would not be represented by a union. The term meet and confer does not mean collective bargaining. So this is absolutely unacceptable to us, being in a collective bargaining state. Because we have so much online education expertise among our faculty, we propose that existing faculty be asked to design the programs and that the degrees and certificates be granted through existing colleges. This can be done through a platform, as the Chancellor referred to the platform. There could be a platform that would pull from the existing 114 community colleges. The online institution that has been cited, Arizona State University, the online part of Arizona State University, is actually taught by ASU faculty already existing on the staff. We can do the same thing. With $120 million set aside for this proposal, we know that faculty could design an extraordinarily effective program to meet the needs of this targeted population. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe there's this principle in math. I'm not a math person, although I did well in high school in math. I think it's called the Principle of Symmetry, and that is, if A equals B, then B should equal A. That doesn't seem to apply here with the online community college proposal. So if we have an online community college, completely separate online community college, who is the target student population? It's the 2.5 million students who have some or no college. If we ask the question the other way, how do we best serve the 2.5 million Californians, plus all the others too, beyond this 25 to 34 age range, how do we best serve them to get them the skills that are perfectly legitimate and that we all agree with? The answer does not end up being 115th fully online community college. We have 114 community colleges in the state already that go from far north to the oceans, to far south, all the way to the west. We have the infrastructure for both online education and on-ground education. We have the ability to outreach to all of these students already at the 114 colleges. We have the infrastructure in place. And if we want to target these students, these Californians, we certainly can. The way to do it is to give this to the local colleges, 114 colleges. Certainly we can have emphasis on targeting this specific population. Everybody agrees that this is a good group of students that certainly need our help. But the way to do this is not through establishing a completely separate online college that costs a lot of money that could be going to the local colleges to fulfill the needs of that population. Thank you.
John Stanskis.
Chancellor Oakley, President Estolano, I'm John Stanskis. I'm with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. We've spoken to you before about the online college. I was at the hearing this morning, and I wanted to say that I really appreciated your presentation of the issue, Chancellor Oakley. I think that you encapsulated the social justice mission of the California community colleges that I, representing the faculty, wholeheartedly agree with. We do have concerns about the implementation part of that, but I think it's important to acknowledge where we agree, that there is a concern. We could do better, and we need to do better and figure out how to do that. I had some specific comments about utilizing $120 million in Prop 98 money for a separate entity when we have 114 colleges who nearly half of their students are over 25 already. are trying to do this and have some regulatory barriers that prevent them from reaching these populations. That's perfectly within the purview of this body. Regulation is your area there. The idea of offering competency-based, self-paced, open calendar, open entry-exit courses to our population is what we call non-credit instruction. And our current regulations make it really difficult to offer online and claim any apportionment for. We could change that. We could do that already at 114 colleges. There are colleges who've been trying to work around the regulation now in order to serve that population. And we should do that to reach them with the infrastructure of an accredited institution that we already have. No, I can't read any of my notes.
30 seconds.
We have a competent faculty who are ready, willing, and able to work to reach these students. We have an infrastructure at the colleges that could really use support, especially our small and rural colleges that do not have the infrastructure to meet the needs of online education as they are currently resourced. And being able to help those students and help those colleges in each of these regions where we know what the needs are in the region and we know who the students are already seems a much more efficient use of state money. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any further speaker cards. So I have in the queue already board members Rawlings, Walker Griffin, Walensky. Anyone else? Dalili, Haynes, Anderson. Okay, that's a starter set. Okay, board member Rawlings, why don't you start us off, followed by board member Walker Griffin.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks for the comments, the public comments. I think they're very informative, very helpful for me. So I take a little bit from the hearing a little earlier today, and I heard a couple comments about like YouTube U and those kind of things. I think those are so informal as to not be effective. Being one of those workers who, I help take care of my mom during the day. I have a nonprofit that I run on the weekends, and I work through the evening time. I'm a evening shift worker. Access to education has been difficult for me throughout my career. And so I've explored these topics quite a bit, including Western governors, and I think there are some good aspects to a variety of them. Some of those I'd like to also call out would be things like iTunes U in the form that it previously existed. Also edX, I think has been very useful, especially in the micro-credentialing side of things and how they've structured some of that open entry-exit. If we could do that with our non-credit programs, I think that would be a value added. I don't see why we wouldn't necessarily be able to do an online college to serve a certain demographic, but then also allow and create the regulatory changes so that our local community colleges could also follow some of that model. Is there any issue or conflict between those two ideas?
No, actually, that is exactly what happened even with our online education initiative, which says that a student can take 2 courses from the course exchange anywhere else. And what we found was that on the book, the student would have to re-register with each college, even though they're just trying to complete out 2 colleges. So last year, the governor helped us carry a regulatory change which allowed the student to seamlessly enroll across all the colleges rather than having to re-enroll in order to get those 2 courses. So I think that's the intent. As we find out these barriers to doing this seamlessly, we would be able to help the rest of the colleges engage.
And then on an issue that is near and dear to my heart is labor and collective bargaining. What's the timeline? I know that there's a provision to call for exclusive representatives to be eligible to be appointed for these employees. What's the timeline in implementing that?
Thank you, Member Rawlings. I think that's an important topic to make sure we clarify completely. because I appreciate the concern that came up by a representative from CCA, Ms. Niaga. But let me be clear. If the trailer bill language isn't clear, we are certainly open to ways that we can clear that up. But it is absolutely the intent to ensure that every classified employee, every faculty member, full and part-time, has access to a bargaining unit. The question is, how do you get from A to Z when you begin with no employees to when you actually get employees? So I think what finance tried to do is to provide a step called meet and confer. If that language does not satisfy some of our partners in labor, we're open to better language, but it is absolutely the intent. As soon as there are full-time employees, to allow them access to bargain. I mean, there's some steps that we could probably look at in between, looking at existing bargaining unit agreements that we may be able to adopt. The issue for us is not predetermining what those working conditions would be, but to allow the employees to determine that. Again, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. We have no intent to subvert the bargaining process here.
Great. Board Member Walker-Griffin, followed by Board Member Belansky, and then Board Member Fawn.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. And I wanted to say, Chancellor Oakley, you're a brave man for sitting through that committee meeting. I would have faked a doctor's appointment or something. But there was a couple of things that I had in mind that I was wondering. So I had an opportunity to look at SSCCC's map, pointing out where the community colleges are in California. And I noticed that Modoc, Glenn, Inyo, and Mono County don't have any community colleges within those counties. And as you get to more rural California, you start to see that they're a little bit more spread apart. You can kind of get an idea if you look at this map. So I have two questions. Is there any push to expand broadband in these rural areas so that students can have the opportunity to get online? And then also for students who may not necessarily be able to afford, say, a laptop or so, is there any push to help them receive maybe like a tablet or some sort of laptop so they can get online and squared away?
So the answer to those questions is generally yes. With regard to broadband, obviously, the California Community Colleges itself cannot extend broadband in those communities, but we do have a commitment on behalf of the governor and the Department of Finance that they have, in the last budget, funded additional access to broadband in those communities that are struggling with it. But at the end of the day, we recognize that not every community is going to have access to broadband. So in those areas, what we're doing as an interim step is talking to our labor and employer partners to make sure that we make available places where those employees can access broadband, whether those be in a place of employment, whether those be in labor organizations, building, shop, whatever that might be. We know we're going to need to ensure that they have access to a place where they can access broadband. So it is a concern. Absolutely. With regard to bundling equipment, that is certainly an idea that has been presented to us, and I know that Vaughn and the team are looking at how can we bundle the right equipment to ensure that you as a student, as you enroll in these skill-based competency modules, have access to the right equipment. So we're certainly open to that, and I think finance is open to that idea as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Belansky, followed by Board Member Fawn and Board Member Baum.
I'll start off also by saying thank you for letting us go to the legislative hearings today, because I think that's good to get a different perspective and hear people and hear the questions that even the legislators asked. I think it's very helpful when you're talking about something that's new, something different. And I felt that way again with this item, that it's the kind of thing that you need some time to really become more knowledgeable about. And I want to say thank you for putting the white paper, the fact sheet, the trailer bill language, and the frequently asked questions. And I hope that you have a website and all of these things are up there on the website, and that there might be some way to engage people to go to that website. Because, I mean, there's things like you talk about what will the governance structure be like? What will the support for online college be like? What are the colleges, groups the college is going to partner with? that fact sheet I thought was quite good. I think the other thing about key challenges and opportunities, I think it's worth reading through just to be more aware of the amount of research that's been done and put into these papers. I also think, because I didn't know anything about the trailer bill and the different provisions and the different expectations at this point in time, at this point in time, and at this point in time. But it, again, something very much worth reading to at least have all of the information that I think is important. I think it says to me that the folks that are putting this together at some point in time will have to hire an implementation team, and when is that being projected toward, and how many people would that be? And
we are in the process of, with the Success Center, raising some philanthropic money in order to bring together some advanced talent. So it'll be a small team with technical talent, business process talent, and partnership talent in order to begin some of the work to set up the online college. And then we will work in the July timeframe to bring you a board item where we have retain an executive search firm in order to begin the CEO search.
But will we get regular updates so that whatever is going on is fully known? It's not something that, like, you're guessing about what's happening behind, the Wizard of Oz.
So, I'll jump in. So, under the proposal, the Board of Governors would become the governing body of this 115th college until the transition occurs with their own Board of Trustees. We'd always envisioned that, much in the case of city government, where they sometimes wear hats of different agencies, that we would have our Board of Governors meetings, and we would also have meetings as the governing body of the 115th college, so that we would be doing that in a regular meeting as well. So there would be regular updates. We would know at least every other month what was going on with the college.
Yeah, and I think that would be helpful also for the public, because sometimes it's when you haven't been provided certain pieces of information, or, oh yeah, we should have got that out, or that suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute. There's I'm saying this could happen because I've seen it happen in other districts where communication isn't happening as effectively as it could. Thank you.
Let me add one last thing to Board Member Belansky's question. Questions were raised at the hearing, and they've been raised here about the relationship between the Board of Governors, the Chancellor's Office, and access to Prop 98 funds. This is a fundamental question as to how we operate in K-12 or community colleges. So the governance question is a very serious question, not just in terms of how we ensure accountability, but how we actually flow money into this new entity. So it is absolutely the case that the intent is to transition this college to the governance of an independent board, just as we would of the other 72 districts. The question for the legislatures and for the governor is how those appointments are made, since it is a statewide district. Those are questions for lawyers in the Capitol to sort out. I'm confident that they can in coordination with CTA and our other partners. In the meantime, we are expecting, since this is the only statewide body currently representing California, that this would be the appropriate place to begin that oversight with the intent to transition it to an independent body.
I got you in the queue. Okay, I have board members Fawn, Baum, DeLille, Haynes, Anderson, and now Aguinaldo.
Thank you. I think from the outset of this dialogue, I have been supportive and applauding the effort to reach the population, the 2.5 million population that we have not otherwise reached. And I'm also encouraged by our Chancellor's message in that this 115th college will not compete with the 114 colleges that we currently have. So I guess my question is, on that non-compete clause, if you will, does that mean the 115 colleges, well, the 115th college will not offer any course, any credential, any program that are currently provided by the 114 colleges? And then second to that question is, we know, Executive Vice Chancellor, that in the CTE arena, the colleges are constantly exploring new courses and new credentials and new programs. So will there be a time, say 5, 3, or 7 years from now, where the 114 colleges are creating new courses and new credentials, and then at the same time, the 115th college will also be offering those same courses? Are we not creating a competitive environment between the 115th and the other 114 colleges?
I'll take
those are my
the
comments.
first part of that question, Member Phan, then I'll turn it over to Executive Vice Chancellor John Quinlivan. I think those are fair and rational questions. And if I can take a step back, if you consider how we're organized today, and I'll just take a further step back to my days at Long Beach City College, we were certainly in competition with Cerritos College, with Cypress College, with Harbor College, and with El Camino College. There's no question about that. That exists today. But that is a competition based on students accessing colleges and places of education that they felt was in their best interest, whether there's a particular program. If I'm an automotive student in the greater Long Beach area, I probably want to access Cerrito College's automotive program rather than Long Beach City College's automotive program. To say that there would absolutely be no competition, I think wouldn't be a fair statement of any of our colleges at any time or place. What we're trying to ensure here is that the way that this is designed doesn't create an unhealthy competition in our system, that we don't create a college that is strictly designed to steal enrollment or to cannibalize credit enrollment from our colleges. I realize that that's a tricky thing to consider. But I think if we focus strictly on job skill attainment, if we use a non-traditional model to deliver it, and that we don't design this college to be focused on traditional undergraduate education or traditional online education, then I think we can accomplish that. What happens over time? That's a great question. What I hope happens is that the colleges learn from the 115th college and can adapt many of the models that are existent and allow the 115th colleges to look at other needs to serve. Ultimately, whether it's the online education initiative or the 115th college, there will certainly be continued competition for students to access online education. I don't think that we can prevent that even without the 115th college. But I think this gives us a rational way to push back on the competition that we're most concerned about, which is the competition from for-profit institutions. Because we know that that's happening today. And I recognize that all my colleagues and I may share different opinions about how to accomplish that. But we do feel that we should provide a solution to beat back the competition that we don't want our students to be able to access, and that is access to the for-profit institutions. So in the design, we're trying to be very intentional that this is meant to provide a public solution to the ways that for-profits try to steal our enrollments, while at the same time allowing for the capacity to be built in our system that our 114 colleges can utilize. To some, that's a tough needle to thread, but I think if we design this right, we can do that.
Okay, we have board members Baum, DeLille, Haynes, and then Anderson and Aguinaldo.
My question is about the market research, and you've identified this population of 2.5 million students, but the vast majority of that 2.5 million students still have access to online programs, still have access, they're within an hour's drive a community college. So even if we build something, we know that they would take advantage of it. And so what kind of market research are we doing that we know that there's this pent-up demand that if it was there, it'd be used? Because I'd hate to spend all this money, time, and energy and then open the doors and realize the market is much smaller than we anticipated.
That is a great question, Member Baum. So the market research is twofold. One is there more demand? Is there a gap in supply, basically, right? So there's more demand than talent being supplied, and is it worthy of a scale that we would want to enter, and is it a right match with this modality? So that's a level of analysis that's being done, but the secondary part is, do we have employers and labor unions who are willing to partner and commit to partnering with us in order to develop these pathways and engage their members or their workers in this training? So we need to have two tiers of commitment, not just the what the numbers say, but whether or not we have engagement from the partners.
So I hope that we're keeping an eye on that, because that'll be very important. The last point that was raised about governance too. Having been on a local board, it's my understanding, though, local boards have to meet monthly. Would we have to meet monthly as a board of governors? We don't have to answer that now. That could be resolved because in essence, we were the governing board for City College of San Francisco for a period of time. We assigned some of that to a special trustee so that the board itself could exercise the oversight using that model.
Great. Board Member DeLille, followed by Board Member Haynes.
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor, and thank you, Chancellor Oakley, for your presentation this morning. It was thoroughly enjoyed. First, in response to a common criticism, Steve Jobs once said, if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will. So while I think there may be a little bit of something, Chancellor Oakley brings up a great point that if it's not us, it might be for profit. And we've seen that story told, and it doesn't have a happy ending for the students of our state. So that's something to keep in mind. My question is, how will tutoring, support services, counseling be encompassed within this 115th? And some things like a financial aid lab, for example, the 115 wouldn't even be able to provide. Will our students of the 115 be able to go to a local community college to gain those services?
So the good news, in the next presentation, we're also going to share with you some of the restructuring that we're doing in our current technology and data portfolio, because we want all of this to intersect and to be aligned. And then part of the design thinking group is about thinking through and studying from the best ventures that are out there, how they do this well. So there's a sort of a study and visit phase that is being asked of us before we start locking down the student services.
But it is expected that we will have counselors, we will have mentors, tribes.
Yes.
So that is all part of the plan.
Yes, all part of the design. Yes.
Thank you.
Board Member Haynes, followed by Board Member Anderson, and then Board Member Aguinaldo.
So I really appreciated the Chancellor's remarks this morning. I also appreciated the questions from the members, but I was also intrigued by the LAO's assessment, and it was brought up, but I don't know to what extent we responded to it. It was on page 5, and it was the governor's proposed solution is not tied to root issues, and there's 2 bullets underneath that. Now, I want to make certain that I understand what they are saying. I mean, so can someone, the Chancellor or Vaughn, explain what they are speaking of when they speak about root causes and this particular population that we're seeking to work with?
So I'll try to answer that, and then certainly if Executive Vice Chancellor has anything to add. So we have to recall that the legislative analyst is responding to the language that was presented by the governor. So it's the trailer bill language that was in print.
Okay.
That trailer bill language admittedly lacks some specificity. So I think part of the challenge that the LAO has is they have to respond to what's in print. I don't think that there was a clear enough dialogue and articulation of the root problem in that initial trailer bill language, which we fully intend to address in the May revision. We think that we have tried to clearly communicate what the root cause is, which is that workers, adult learners who are working jobs, sometimes 2 and 3 jobs at a time, have a very difficult time accessing the brick and mortar colleges. And I think the public testimony that you heard from the student reflects what that root cause is. Now, certainly, if you want to talk about the ultimate root cause, I mean, we've got issues of income inequality in California, poor access to quality educational opportunities, homelessness, food insecurity. I mean, that list goes on and on and on, and we are in no way suggesting that this solution addresses all of those root causes, but what we are suggesting is that this is a solution that can help these individuals gain better access to good-paying jobs and have a better foothold in the economy. But we recognize that in and of itself, this solution will not change the direction of these individuals unless we couple that with access to our 114 colleges beyond these job skill credentials, as well as access to student supports, access to financial aid, and access to good-paying jobs. So that is the way that we've responded to the legislative analyst. With regard to the language that's in print now, we expect to be able to amend that language in the May revision and hope to address some of those concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Anderson, followed by Board Member Aguinaldo.
Can I ask a technical question because I'm trying to get up to speed and sort of learn a little bit? So the 115th college, will it only employ a certain number of professors that teach through it, or will the other 114, be able to go ahead and teach on the statewide platform?
So I will begin that. It is a little bit of both. So certainly the online college has to have a cadre of full-time faculty. The content experts that are developing the curriculum, that are advising our students, that are developing the assessment methods, those are full-time employees of the college. But just as through the online education initiative, if a faculty member at Long Beach City College has content expertise and wants to teach on a part-time basis at the 115th college, they have every opportunity to do so. As a matter of fact, we would want to recruit those content experts. So this happens now. Part-time faculty can teach at multiple colleges. Full-time faculty can teach part-time at multiple colleges. So we don't want to limit who has access to teach at the 115th college, but the core faculty have to be full-time, fully employed, tenured faculty.
And to ask as a follow-up to that, does that mean then at the 114, they will not be able to go ahead and create any online content through their colleges?
No, it does not mean that. So, and I realize part of the challenge here is trying to unpack all these issues. When we say online education, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What the 114 colleges are doing now is they're taking their curriculum, their courses that are traditionally taught in the classroom, and they're putting them on an online platform. The system has developed and purchased an online learning management system for the entire 114 college system. It's called Canvas. So we encourage that further development through the Online Education Initiative, which is the curator of this online content and supporting the 114 colleges to develop more online content. That would continue. What we're talking about here is now creating a competency-based learning platform, a personalized learning platform, which currently doesn't exist in the system. And then once that is established and we have verified through research and data the efficacy of that learning platform, we would make it available to all of our 114 colleges as an additional tool to use. So they can use that to further develop out out competency-based online content. So there is a distinction between what most people understand as traditional online education. What we're talking about here is adding a different component that currently we do not produce at any scale, and then allowing that to happen and be tested and then be adapted and adopted at 114 colleges.
So currently the 114, do they derive revenue through the Canvas program?
Yes, so they do it in two ways. One is they offer their own online content to their community using Canvas, and they receive the apportionment for those students. If they provide that instruction through the online education platform, then they still own those students, basically. So they still continue to generate revenue.
My concern, obviously, is that it is not punitive to the 114. So, as you work this through, both from a legislative standpoint, drafting, and the lawyers go ahead and look at this, that, if me as the chancellor in Santa Rosa or the president in Santa Rosa, I don't punish that, wonderful staff person to say, I want you because I got a higher percentage from Canvas versus going through the 115th college, that would be my concern.
And we acknowledge that concern, and the other major proposal that's on the table is a change to the funding formula so that these issues of competition become less emphasized, and there's a greater emphasis on helping students finish a credential. But that's a whole different presentation, but they are tied together.
Board Member Aguinaldo, then we have Vice President Epstein.
Thank you very much. First, I want to acknowledge the Chancellor for his zealous representation of the California Community Colleges system this morning. It was really a sight to see. And thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor, for your presentation this morning and for also accompanying me on the walk here this morning. We had an opportunity to talk briefly about my personal online education experience, in which in, I think, the year 2000 or 2001, I took a psychology and philosophy course, both 101s at College of the Canyons. So first of all, it's amazing that 18 years ago they enrolled 2-year-olds. But that there's been considerable progress in those 18 years to what's offered today. I mean, I remember just a couple weeks ago I was taking compliance training at my current company, and I think that's everyday online education that all of us actually are exposed to quite regularly. Specific as to this issue, I think of 3 primary topics. One is that the 2.5 million prospective students under this online college system are separate and distinct from the 2.1 million that are currently serviced by the community college system. Is that right?
This online college has a projection of serving 45,000 students after the 7-year time frame. And so when we talk about the magnitude of the need of 2.5 million, it's still a drop in the water in terms of the full size of need. Now, that's not to say that none of these students, 2.5, have ever touched any of our community colleges, but what they don't have is their first industry valued credential.
Okay, so that's separate and distinct, though, from the 2.1 million that are currently serviced by the system. So if we're looking at prospective students on the 115th college and the current students, it's almost 5 million people. Is that accurate?
You want to take?
So, I mean, there are different ways to look at that demographic pool. Certainly, the population that has been identified is a population that has at least a high school diploma, but no college credential. So while some of those individuals may have touched a community college, we know that they do not have that credential. So that is the population that we're targeting with this. And that population is best captured by the labor organizations that represent them, the employers that employ them. And so that's how we would try to target that population. But obviously when we have a sample size that big, there's going to be a lot of variation in there. But I feel confident that within that demographic group, there are a lot of individuals that this particular solution would target specifically.
So they're not separate and distinct. There's actually a lot of overlap.
There is some overlap in some cases, certainly, and I think that overlap is best articulated in the testimony that our student did today at the hearing. For those of you who didn't get a chance to hear Roxanne, she was a student at one of our community colleges, but she was not able to complete at our community college for many reasons, some of which have to do with her own concerns and anxieties. Some have to do with caring for her family and having a job. So in that case, there was some overlap. And in that case, providing another solution through the California community colleges for that student would be able to serve her needs rather than her going to a for-profit. In some cases, some of these individuals have never touched a community college campus. So, but the bottom line for all these demographics is, for whatever reason, and there could be many reasons, the current structure of our system has not been able to serve their needs where they're at.
Okay, but whoever they are and however many there may be, they are our primary target population in terms of our mission as a community college system to serve.
Yes.
The second tenet that I understand is that there are plenty of case studies for profit that have gone extraordinarily poorly and that also have gone extraordinarily well. And then the third tenet that I'm thinking of is that California always strives to remain on the cutting edge, if not lead the way. So thinking of those three tenets, I'd like to ask you two questions. One is, how will the 115th college do better than what's currently out there? Because the 45,000 students that are prospective that we hope to serve, at least in the short term, do have these options available already. And then second of all, have we contemplated national competition or national interest from students outside of California who may avail themselves of this specific modality because California is the best?
I wish I could say that in launching this fully online statewide college, we would be the first state to be out there. But our study group actually brought in Kentucky, Colorado, and Arizona, all of whom have a statewide online venture. So we actually brought some of those case studies into the mix to look at what they did and what they learned. And our hope is that is to parlay and leverage what is out there and really think about, and this is why we're doing the design thinking session, what is the latest evolution in technology and technologies that support the student, and really think through what we can import and bring together in order to make a California version that works well for this particular population. So that's the invitation for us, is to design what works, what would work for California, and to be able to build on top of the shoulders of others.
Let me add one thing. There's a question you raised about students from outside of California. I mean, the entire intent is to build a system that responds to the needs of Californians. Just as all of our 114 colleges do now, we do not prevent students from outside of California from taking education at one of our institutions, whether online or brick and mortar. And we would have the same mechanisms for non-resident students to be able to access and to pay a fee greater than resident students. So we recognize that we can't keep non-Californians out, but the guardrails are there to ensure that we are designing for Californians and ensuring that we have the lowest tuition possible for our resident students.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice President Epstein, and then Board Member Rawlings also wants to get in at the end.
A couple of things came up in the hearing this morning that I'd like to get some clarification on. On the accreditation, you mentioned that at ACC, JC, and there's also some online credential. Chancellor mentioned WASC as well. What exactly are we pursuing, and do we expect to be accredited when the first courses launch in the fall of 19 so that students can get financial support?
So we'll begin the accreditation planning very early on to make sure that as we set out the pathways, we begin these processes concurrently. So with DEAC, which is the competency-based education entity, you begin filing at the moment of first enrollment. Whereas with ACC, JC, it's upon the student first completing. So the timing is just slightly different with these different bodies. But we do fully intend to do the accreditation planning process from the get-go.
So the first students that enroll, though, in 19 would not be eligible for financial aid. Is that true?
With these bodies, once you begin accreditation planning, it also has a grandfather period.
Oh, okay. Yes. They could do it retroactively. Yeah. This Prop 98 issue that's been raised by some of the speakers today, could you, I'm not sure I really understand that. Could someone explain how that
Well, we will try our best to explain, but when Prop 98 was established, it was established specifically to lock in funding for K through 14 educational institutions. There have been one, if not more than one court case. The most visible is Gould v. CTA, where the Department of Finance, then Department of Finance Director Russ Gould, was trying to, through the budget process, divert funds to agency or other instructional priorities, and CTA, it's represented here today, challenged that and basically concluded that Prop 98 funds can only go to and support activities at a local education authority, a college or a K-12 district. And so in many cases, our 72 districts are designed to be able to receive that funding directly from Prop 98. That's why districts are established, as well as creating the corporate structure to be able to deal with liability and everything else that a normal corporation would have to deal with. And certainly we have our general counsel here who could get into more detail on the legal matters, but that's generally the issue, that only a California recognized education authority can access Prop 98. So I think that there's a lot of concern that that it not be accessed by the Chancellor's office. And for many of you who already know this, and for the new members, the Chancellor's office does not receive funds from Prop 98. I think for many, that's an unfortunate consequence that we cannot provide a level of support because we can't access Prop 98. We are funded through the general fund. But that is a concern as to what this new structure would mean to how Prop 98 has been used in the past.
So what some of the speakers are saying was that they're afraid that Prop 98 money could go to the new college, even though it's not of the proper governance. Is that?
Well, I think I think there's a difference of opinion about what proper governance means. The Department of Finance has taken a lot of time, and their attorneys feel comfortable that the governance structure that they have proposed would meet the test of Prop 98. We also feel confident that they have met the test. Having said that, there is a difference of opinion of whether it really does meet the test, and I think that's something that I think the lawyers will chew on and come back to us. But we do agree that that we must establish an independent district for this to be supported in the long term, be able to receive Prop 98 funds. So at that point, the question is, right now 72 districts are locally elected in districts. This would be a statewide entity, so how would you set up the representation structure and the governance structure that still meets the Prop 98 tests and satisfy the governance for the district to be able to receive Prop 98 funds? I think those are the questions that are sort of floating on the table. How do you land this plane? We feel confident that the structure of the finances developed does meet that standard.
And not to beat this to death, but then their other concern is that if it's taking Prop 98 money away from the 114 colleges, if it is eligible for Prop 98, is that correct?
Well, this would be the 115th college. Whether or not we create the 115th college as an online or not, we are still going to have a 115th college. I mean, We have reached 114 for a reason, because there is demand in the state. So every time you add a college, certainly there is greater demand on Prop 98. That, with or without the online college, that would be true. That has never stopped us from developing a new college. So I'm curious as to why that would stop us now. But yes, certainly there is a demand. But once the college gets going, it is funded based on its own enrollment. So it would not be a concern outside the first couple of years of initial investment.
And it would be subject to the new funding formula?
Whatever the funding formula looks like at the end of the day, it would be subject to.
I'm sorry, just one last comment, and no question, but just the issue that's popped up since we first talked about this is this competition with for-profit colleges, which I find really compelling, and I think it makes a much stronger case for this. In the legislative hearing this morning, also one of the members talked about his disappointment with the fact that the colleges tend to offer, the existing colleges tend to offer all their courses between 10 and 4 Monday through Thursday, and that that he sees for-profit colleges bulging with students in the evenings and on weekends, and I think that's a legitimate concern and something that we ought to be talking about and looking at some point as well.
Okay, I think we have Board Member Rawlings, followed by Board Member Avalos. Go ahead.
Thank you. So a couple questions, and I think actually to the point the Vice President made, I know some colleges have tried the evening colleges and weekend colleges, different points where the economy has been up and down. It'd be interesting to see if we have any of the data on what we've learned from those and how we might be able to do some outreach at our existing colleges to help meet some of this need, although it probably wouldn't meet all of it. Which brings me to the question about where we have a different focus for the 115th college, where we're focused on those job skills. We're using badges and micro-credentials, I think is a great step to take to kind of quantify the skills that might not be measurable through degrees or certificates. So if we have a student that comes into the online college, they go through, they're learning some of these skills, maybe New World Work kind of stuff, or maybe it's through the trade unions and getting some of their credentials. Are we thinking about how we transition those students, or some of those students, from the online college at the 115th college, getting those job skills, into where they might decide through that experience that, hey, maybe college is for me, and I do want to go to complete a degree? Do we have a method where we're planning a transition for those students from the 115th college to OEI and the offerings that would be there for the undergraduate degree programs?
I think the big answer is yes, and I think this is a paradigm shift for the workforce overall. Our prior paradigm is one where you consume education, maybe in your early 20s, and then you're mostly done. But the reality of the workforce is you're going to need to come back for booster shots over and over and over. So if we can get a lot of working adults to get into the norm of consuming education and training on a regular basis, it is that maybe they come to the 114 colleges to do their degree, but we hope that won't be their last time, because they're going to need to come back regardless of whether they move to LA or Orange County or Central Valley, and will consume either the online college or the 114 colleges.
Yeah, so my comment would be very brief, but I think that in hearing the conversation this morning, I feel like we need to figure out clear metrics of success down to the individual, because what I heard was wage gain, but that's pretty amorphous, right? I mean, how do you define wage gain? At what point? Who is it? How? And it's clear that wage gain is very important, obviously, but there's probably other corollaries associated with that. And then what is the distinction between what we're trying to do with the 115th versus a for-profit? The for-profit, says you will get a job opportunity, you'll have a better opportunity to have a better lifestyle. Well, we have to make sure that we don't create that same false promise, and that we're actually building that relationship with employers and they're creating that link. So to me, like a career services component is really important, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to define success, in my opinion, whether we get these folks through and get better opportunities for them in the future.
And I think this ties really nicely into our new world of work conversation, right? Could we actually help workers build up that skill set, which is a real impediment to them moving upwards? And as if you remember Regina talking, she wants to get into the virtual reality and augmented reality space. I mean, so these all converge very nicely in terms of a robust offering that can help students do better in the workplace.
And those badges need to be, accepted by the industry, if you will, right. And they need to be defined by the industry who we're trying to get employed with, right? So to me, that is the connection back to, measuring success.
Yes.
If I can add just one final point, Member Avalos, I think those are the right questions. How do we measure success? And I think we will have the opportunity to talk about those over and over again in the structure that we've provided, because I think we want to ensure that is done by individual, that we don't fall into the same trap as for-profits. What we are promising is an opportunity to go into a pathway that we know has been developed and designed with labor partners and employers that has a there at the end of it. And then the two final things I want to say, and we haven't been able to address, the question of part-time. I'm not aware of any language in the trailer bill that suggests that our college would be strictly part-time faculty, and if that's been confusing to some, then we will certainly clean that up. But it is not the intent for this to be a fully part-time college. We need full-time content experts at this college, and that is a commitment that we will make. The final thing, I have to apologize that I'm going to step out. I don't want anybody to think I'm tired of talking to you, but I have to go to D.C. to talk more about the online college to some people that are very interested in what we're doing here. So I apologize if I step out here in the next few seconds.
Thank you, Chancellor. I just want to wrap a couple things, and then we're going to take a short break. Then we're going to do the Hayward Awards, because I understand we have all of our awardees today, which is great. We want to make best use of your time, and then we'll finish up the rest of the agenda. But on the issue of the online college, I just want to focus a few things. One is it has to be flexible, it has to be on demand, it has to be demand driven. And I think, Board Member Avalos, your point about what are we really promising people? The difference is we've developed it, or we are developing it, with labor and employer partners. It's truly demand-driven, which is often what we say we're doing in workforce development, but we rarely achieve. And so this only works if we have commitments up front, that the curriculum we're designing is tailored to precisely the career skills that these particular industries and unions need, right? So I think it's really important that we have union partners and employer partners, and I can think of nobody better to forge those partnerships than our Executive Vice Chancellor. But it's also really important, and we've talked about the privates a lot, so flexible, on-demand, demand-driven, public in a California way, which means affordable. We have the most affordable system in the country. It also means that there's stability for our workforce, that our workforce is going to be in a position to be the best and the brightest because they know they have a secure job. They're represented by strong employee associations or unions, and they're not fearful for their jobs. They have the job security they need to develop cutting-edge curriculum. And I think that is a commitment that the Chancellor just made, but I'll just tell you as President of the Board of Governors, I would not want to be a part of creating a 115th college that wasn't represented. But the last part about public is accountability. And so I got to be a potted plant at the hearing today. I had a brilliant speech prepared. Yes. But in the Senate hearing about a month ago, I actually did get to speak a little bit about accountability. And I do want to note for my colleagues here on the board that we have a lot that we need to step up to as board members. We're going to be expected to be a board of trustees for the newest college that's going to be unlike any other college in our system. So it may mean that we're meeting monthly. I think you're up for it. I mean, when I was at the Senate, I talked about how diverse and how really diligent everybody is on this board. We have really great attendance. People read their board reports. People ask tough questions. We have lengthy deliberations. It's not a rubber stamp. We ask tough questions. So we're going to need to do that and actually double that effort if this is a successful initiative. We're expected to be the Board of Trustees through this transition. So it means we're really going to need to be focused. We have some great new board members, really excited about having you all online, but what an exciting time for you. You signed up for every other month. Maybe you'll get to meet monthly. So, just to reiterate, flexible, on-demand, demand-driven, public in the California sense of affordable, accountable, stable, and representing the best values of our system. So with that, thank you, Vaughn. We're going to take 5-minute break because we still have a lot to get through, folks. So 5 minutes, which means come back at, let's say, 12:40. Okay, that's 8 minutes. Okay, 12:40. Thanks.